मेरे नाम Jonty Rhodes.
You named your daughter India.
I'm now obviously Indian.
Gautam Gambhir had suggested your name as the fielding coach, and the board did not want.
Yeah, can you believe it? I mean, they didn't want an international coach, and I'm so local. People don't expect that from Rohit. You know, he's quite a cheeky guy. It's perfect practice. That makes perfect.
John.
Ah, sure, but I've just broken the microphone. I'm that kind of fielder. When I'm not trying to catch, I still catch it.
I think cricket has become much more commercial now than it was back in the day.
How wide's it?
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Aleena Dissects. Today we're doing a very special episode. It's a cricket-based podcast and I know a lot of you have been asking for it. And as you can tell with my excitement, that I have today with me the greatest fielder that cricket has ever seen. So please join me in welcoming Jonty Rhodes. Hi Jonty, thank you so much for doing this with us. It's really an honor.
Just checking it wasn't Jonathan.
No,
Are you sure?
I'm not going to call you
Okay,
Jonathan,
thank you.
even if I
Thank
want
you.
to.
Great to be here. Thanks, Aleena.
I'm so glad. Jonty, the first question that I have for you, I'm most curious about, and that's why it's the first one because we have to get it out. You named your daughter India, and while that is so heartwarming, I wanted to understand what your journey has been since the time that you first came to India, then naming your daughter, coaching, playing, and maybe now that she's older and it's been a while, what impact has it had?
Well, my journey through India has been fascinating, to say the least. You know, the first time I toured here as a cricket player, 1993. So India itself has seen a lot of changes. You know, we would play the test matches in the metros and you would stay in five-star hotels. And then when you played before T20, you would play quite a few one-day internationals. Right. And generally they would take you out to tier one cities or you know, not the metros. And that for us was really interesting. But as players, we used to struggle coming to India because turning wickets, slow wickets compared to South Africa, we had 27 years of sporting isolation imposed on a racist apartheid government in South Africa. So I grew up in a white privileged environment in South Africa.
Right.
Only had white friends at school, only white kids who played. So coming to India, I mean, my journey, and the great thing about India is that people talk about diversity across state, but within the state itself, that diversity is incredible. And as a player, you're pretty much in the airport, you're in the hotel, and you're at the cricket ground. And you fly over the country or you drive through in the AC bus. And that's been the one thing that I've really tried my utmost to do coming here as an IPL coach. And this is back since 2009, 2010, spending 8 to 10 weeks in India, riding two wheels, whether it's a bicycle or a motorbike, getting out. Obviously, if it's a motorbike, you can see more of a place in 3-4 hours, but ensuring that I get to experience India in every city that I go to. So my teammates stay in the hotel, that's fine. And but I've been on a journey of self-discovery, because I've certainly realized that the more you learn about other people, the more you learn about yourself. And I'm at 55 now, you just never stop learning. And it's been a wonderful experience for me. But going back to India and my India, sorry, why we call India, my wife and I, she's South African, had never been to India before she met me, a yoga teacher, also an architect. So for her, from a spirituality point of view, she practiced Vedanta philosophy. She was desperate to come to India and had just jumped at the opportunity. And both our children have been born down the road in Santa Cruz. And you know, we've really embraced what India brings, the good and the bad. I mean, let's face it, every country has issues, and in South Africa we know all about that. And we celebrate the good, and we certainly try and throw a spotlight on issues where we can, because we have a platform, not obviously as efficient and as well broadcast as yours, but we're getting there. But in 2015 there was a lot of talk about the girl child and in India. And you know, for my wife to name India was very spiritual, and it had a real deep connection to the sort of philosophies that in India. And for me, it was a case of, I used to ride the bike in Nariman Point, Trident Hotel, turn right on the way to Wankhede Stadium, just 5 minutes. But every day that I got on my bike to turn right, something different happen. I mean, it was
Right.
insane. So you come here, and often as non-Indians, those people, because I'm now obviously Indian, those people would have, expectations about India. And India can be overwhelming. It
Yes.
really is in your face and in your space. There's not a lot of personal space in India. And we as a couple, we've embraced that. And whereas a lot of people would find it a bit intimidating, and I think for me, that the naming of India, our India, as India, was, I obviously spent a lot of time with some of the greatest cricket players this country has produced. They have children, and the expectation on the child of these great cricketers is immense. So for us, even though I'm not a great cricketer, I had a big following in India because of my fielding, and I wanted my daughter to know that this is her journey. So I have no expectation, a bit like riding the motorbike. I'm going to embrace whatever, this is her journey, and whatever she does, I will support it and embrace it. Because a lot of the times parents, the expectation through the children it comes from the parents at times, not all the time.
Jonty, you have a very close working relationship with Gautam Gambhir, who's obviously now the head coach of the Indian cricket team. How do you think under his leadership, what impact will it have?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, GG is somebody who is passionate about what he does. He doesn't do anything half-heartedly. And I'm not saying there's any Indian coach that's ever done anything half-hearted, because let's face it, it's a pretty demanding job just from a pressure perspective.
Right.
There's so many eyeballs on you the whole time.
Yes.
And difficult to get away and sort of release the pressure. He's going to be very different to a Rahul Dravid. And again, it's around the personality. And which is great, because every coach brings something different.
Right.
It also, I think the key there is how he's going to work. There's, the Indian team is very mature.
Yes.
I'm not being rude, it's very mature. Some great talented young players coming through, but some of the senior players. So there's transition happening within India, maybe not this year, but it's a case of going, how does that all sort of fit into with his personality? Gigi's, as I said, he's not somebody who stands back. I'm sure he will give players room, but he is quite a demanding guy, because he gives 100% all the time.
Right.
So there is no off button, don't worry, it's not that important. It's everything, detail. He's committed 100% to the job that he's doing. And I mean, he loves cricket still. I mean, and he could probably play and score runs himself. But, I think he's going to work with a team that's going through a bit of transition, but nobody can ever fault his commitment. So if he's asking for something from the players, it's because he's prepared to give just as much.
Right. Is it true that Gautam Gambhir had suggested your name as the fielding coach and the board did not want to go through
Yeah,
it?
can you believe it? I mean, they didn't want an international coach, and I'm so local. They want a local fielding coach. I mean, Meri naam Jonty Rhodes. Come on.
This is going to be the headline of the podcast. I thought
Come
maybe
on.
he won't even answer
Meri
it.
naam Jonty Rhodes. Yeah, I'm based Goa. Maybe it's because I'm based in Goa. Maybe I need to be in a metro or something. No.
But we were also hearing rumors that you were supposed to be coaching the Indian team also.
I heard that too. I got congratulations all throughout the day. It was even, it was kind of on official sports websites and on the social media.
Yeah.
But it's, I've taken my hat off to the last two fielding coaches in the Indian setup. I mean, I think, and it comes from the captaincy. I mean, under Dhoni certainly showed players. He had a lot of senior guys at the end of their sort of era. And he just showed through his physical ability how important, I mean, he's still at the end of his whenever he calls an end of his IPL career, between the wickets, amazing. I mean, he's 40 and he still runs like that between the wickets. It's incredible. So he certainly showed, just through his example, the importance of fitness and speed and strength.
Right.
And then when Virat Kohli took over the captaincy, I mean, he made it was a part of the selection criteria. If you don't pass the fitness standards, sorry, no matter how good you are, no matter what results you're producing, if you're not, because everybody's then treated equal. So that was interesting. And it took India, because to be a good fielding team, you need to be a fit and mobile and, energetic side. And it took India to, one of the better fielding sides, because they've always had good fielders, Mohammad Kaif, Yuvraj, Harbhajan Singh even. You've had 2 or 3 good players in the setup, as Redin at the start of my career. So you had Azhar and these guys who were good, but maybe 7 guys you were trying to hide. In these days, there's no space to hide anybody.
Right.
And it's incredible how, sort of India's dominance has not just coincided with great players, but certainly there's three elements to the game. It's no longer just batting and bowling and a couple of guys field. The third discipline is fielding. And if you've got 4 or 5 players you're trying to hide in the team, you are weaker than than your opponents, and you're giving them a slight advantage. And the teams these days are so evenly matched, you can't afford to give away 1% or 2%. So that's been interesting development, and I think the captaincy, the individuals that were captaining India through MSD and then through Virat Kohli certainly had a huge impact on that ability, and the fielding coaches that they employed have been superb. They really have been superb.
Right. And what do you think of the current fielding team that we have versus back then in your time? So do you think the difference is?
What fielding team in my day? I mean, I had, so Azharuddin at Gully in that sort of region, great hands, quick movement. Mohammed Kaif, excellent fielder. But you literally, if someone put a foot down to stop the ball, that was the extent of fielding, or calling the ball to throw the ball back, that was it. So, we as a South African team in the early 90s, because of the years of isolation, had no international experience. But South Africans, we play multi-sport, not just cricket. So some guys are good rugby players, I was a hockey player, tennis players. So for us, the fitness part and the mobility wasn't a big change. It was just a bit more dedication towards focusing on the fitness, because it was never in the gym. You didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. We as a team just did hours and half an hour at the end of every practice, just working specifically on our fitness. And I would generally come from 6 months of hockey into cricket season very fit, because everything with hockey is just running. It's like football, guys run the whole time. So really, from a fielding point of view, it's amazing to see how it's changed, because then it was all about defending the single, taking your catches. Now it's saving on the boundary, all the shots that the players are playing, the incredible catches, the juggling stuff, the passing to your partner, which we practice, but was never a part of the game when I was playing. My whole career was literally in one area, at backward point, and maybe if a spin bowler was bowling at mid wicket or short cover, but the rest of the time I never even left 10-15 meters away from the batter. So fielding has evolved, the players have really improved. And it's great to see that the focus on fielding, because I was always so passionate about fielding, and it's nice to have had a job, because my playing days were done long before the IPL. I mean, I worked for a bank in South Africa, so I have a commercial degree, and suddenly the IPL came around, and it was exciting to be a part of, as an assistant coach, to be a part of the game again. So it's been a great journey, I think, seeing how fielding has evolved and developed, and how the players in the Indian setup now are superb. So, as I said, they had 2 or 3 good fielders. Now they've got, Jadeja is just ridiculous in the field. Suresh Raina, I'm a huge fan of when he played. I just loved seeing him in the field. So, but as a team, generally, they work really well, and they've worked really hard at their fielding over the last 10 years. So, and you're seeing that, and we will look at the IPL, these young players that come through, they are really good fielders already. So even at state level, there's a big focus on improving their fielding performance as the third discipline with batting and bowling.
My question was actually that, when we talk about cricket, everybody wants to do the batting and everybody wants to do the bowling, but not a lot of people want to do the fielding. Why do you think that happens?
Well, it's interesting now because you can't afford to have that attitude anymore. Because if you sit in a selection meeting, and that's the beauty of, at the IPL, you've got the cream of the crop from all countries.
Yes, from everywhere.
So if you've got 2 or 3 local players, or 2 players, and you're trying to make a decision as coaching staff between this player or that player, so if their discipline is batting, they'll come to me before they make a decision and say, who's the better fielder? Because if they not sure which way to go, if one player is head and shoulders above, then you pick that one on their skill. But if they're both similar and they're not sure, they ask me who will have a more positive impact in the field. So it does make a difference. It really does make a difference. And I think people at the level that I'm coaching at the IPL, I see that. And then for scouting, we do some work at some of the state T20 leagues, and I speak to the fielding coaches there. I watched the Hyderabad team play, and their fielding was incredible.
Okay.
So there are, at state level who've certainly adapted or adopted the approach that fielding is as important as batting and bowling. So that has changed. So for players, there will be a couple of guys who, I'm a batter, I'm a bowler, but if they don't focus on their fielding, they're going to get left behind. And people,
Right.
I mean, India, that's the one thing about India. There's a pool of very hungry cricket
talent.
players, talented and hungry. We've got talent everywhere, but hungry, that comes from you.
Right. I wanted to understand, you coached the Mumbai Indians team. What was your role in shaping the fielding unit?
Well, it was interesting because I wasn't there season 1, 2008. And I think MI had to win one of their last 2 matches to qualify, because then there were only 8 teams. And I think their last 2 matches, they were terrible in the field because they didn't have a fielding coach.
Okay.
So Sean Pollock, because Sachin had been injured, so Sean was captain, Harbhajan, Sanath Jayasuriya. And Sean Pollock actually, the day that Mumbai lost and then were out the playoffs, again, fumbles in the field, misfielding, drop catches. Sean Pollock said, just call Jonty Rhodes. Because I had worked for South Africa in the 2007 World Cup, the 50-over World Cup. Because this is also, before the IPL, there was no coaching. You had one coach for the team.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was usually an ex-player from that country.
Yes.
So coaching wasn't really regarded as a whole bunch of head coach, assistant coaches around them. It was generally 1 or 2 coaches. So once that IPL happened, and they said, can you come 2009? And then the IPL actually moved to South Africa.
Yes.
So Karen Pollard was in the team in 2010. And it was interesting. He was a catalyst to a lot of the stuff that happened.
Okay.
Because 2009, my first year, yes, we worked on high intensity. But the international players, Pollard was somebody who defended the boundary like a basketball player. I mean, he was saving big hands, big guy who moved really, really well. And he was, I'm a firm believer. You work with players, but you need someone to show them what is possible.
Right.
And so it was more than me, I think. It was certainly a guy like Karen Pollard just lifting everybody and showing what they could achieve. So it was good to be a part of it because I was season 2, and they had also realized, so you had real support from the rest of the management, real support from the owners, Nita Babi, because they had seen what fielding had cost them in season 1, and they were really happy to support me and the methods and the techniques that I was trying to implement.
And they saw the changes in the other season.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, we didn't win the trophy for a while. That was a bit frustrating, and it wasn't, kind of, things were fine. But the fielding certainly picked up, and it also then made a decision on when you started selecting new players and understanding that you can't just be a batter or a bowler. There's an element that we need more athletic players in the squad. And if they bat, that's great, but what are they like in the field? So again, when it came to auctions and selections, if there's a choice of 2 players you're unsure of, what is their contribution in the field became a big part of why you select and why you're going to pay somebody to play for your franchise.
Since we're talking about fielding, do you think that having a strategy is more important than having a mindset? What do you think is more important?
The mindset. I mean, strategies, because, I think about our bowling plan. So as a fielding coach, I sit with the bowlers to understand what their strategy is and where they want to bowl. So I know which the hot spots will be. So where I want to put my better fielders. Okay. So, and the poor bowling coach and the bowlers kind of go, okay, plan A, plan B, and if we've got to go to plan C, we're in trouble, So the mindset is just, okay, plan A didn't work. Don't panic and go to plan B too early. Maybe, you bowled it well. And again, it comes down to sort of process versus outcome. So if you're more outcome focused, and that can be tough because you bowl a ball and you actually bowl it properly, or as per the plan, execution was ideal. Bumrah can bowl perfect Yorker and someone gets an inside edge and it goes for 4, or an outside edge and it goes for 4, but he's done everything well. So the mindset is really important because that backs up the game plan. And having a game plan where you're consistent, because if you flip-flopping from this is right and that's right, oh no, we must try this, the bowler himself standing there is in trouble because now you're unsure. So a key of what we as coaches try and do is impart this ownership of their performance on the field, because you can't keep looking to the coach going, what next?
Right.
You know, once a game starts, they're in charge of that. And sure, there's so much data now. We use a lot of technology to work on those game plans.
Okay.
But if you go plan 1, plan 2, and the 6th ball, you're on your 6th plan, then you really are in trouble. So a lot of the time is kind of understanding what is the best delivery that you bowl.
Right.
Stick with that. You know, you're going to get it right. You know you're going to, and because pressure does funny things. You know, whether you're batting or bowling. Batting too. I mean, you've got ek chance. You're out, you're out.
So mindset over technique is what you would say?
Well, I'd say technique, but strategy. Mindset plays a massive part because it allows you to implement the strategy and your technique.
Right.
You know, because if you're nervous and you're tense, you don't quite hit your delivery stride from a bowling point of view. Maybe your head falls over because you're trying to force the ball. Batting is the same. You're thinking, I've got to hit a 6-0 or a boundary. So suddenly you grip the bat and you're swinging too hard and you lose we call it shape, or your technique changes because you swing yourself too hard. So if you've got the mindset that you've done the work,
yes,
and you're prepared, whatever they bowl, I can deal with. Whatever the batter's going to do, I've got the right ball for that. So mindset allows you to play to the best of your ability, for sure.
Right. You've coached Rohit Sharma, I think, for about 8 years, and you had a close relationship with him in terms of coaching him. What do you think sets him apart from like the other openers?
Mindset. I mean, it's incredible because you know, I had guys like a Sachin who was meticulous in his preparation, and you know, I just kept saying I had sort of best job in the world because I sit and I watch, because they didn't do a lot of fielding.
Okay.
Sachin's fingers are way too valuable, so I don't want to break them or anything like that. So I had the best job in the world. I could sit and watch these guys bat. Sachin in the nets. Sachin in his preparation, meticulous. Whoever we were playing against, he was then practicing with either with a left arm bowler or me serving tennis balls at him. That the bounce was, you know, if he's facing Dale Steyn, he knows it's coming towards his nose and his shoulder. He doesn't want to practice with a hard ball because he could break his fingers. So Jonty I was a tennis player, serve the ball so it sort of bounces around my head and I can practice dropping my hands or playing the ramp shot. So meticulous. And then someone like Rohit who, you know, he just walked just the way, I mean, he hasn't changed at all. It's so ridiculous. You know, I just picture his walk when he walked out to bat, and he would have a few throwdowns in the net or even shadow hitting. You know, it was just majestic. Right. So he didn't practice as hard as Sachin Tendulkar, that's for sure. Maybe he practiced away from the nets at times, but just his technical ability, and I think, you know, he doesn't always have the best technique. He's been criticized, not a lot of foot movement, but because he's so relaxed at the crease, you know, his hands flow so well, and it's been great to see him evolve. Because he stayed, you know, he stayed the same and he stayed true to himself, and I think that's so important, because if you're a Virat Kohli and you're more in the face of people, that's Virat Kohli. You know, you can't ask him to be, or Rohit to now suddenly, you know, you're taking over from this guy, be like him. Just if you're true to yourself,
right,
you're going to be way more consistent in your performance. So it's been good to see his journey. So even playing, you know, against him or coaching against him, whether he's at IPL franchise level or playing international cricket, you see the same, you know, he messes around with his teammates. You hear some of the comments on the microphone or the stump mic.
Yes.
I mean, he's really funny. And people don't expect that from Rohit.
Right.
You know, he's quite a cheeky guy. And he's a senior guy. Yeah, he's behaving like a kid. So that has been consistent. So, and I think as a captain, it takes pressure, again, mindset. You know, the players are no longer, or not stressed under him, because he's just, again, aram se.
But do you think his leadership, Rohit Sharma's leadership, has evolved through the years?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he first took over at MI. No, you know, it's a growth path. Captaincy, people can be born leaders. I mean, they really can, and there have been great leaders who were leaders from a young age. But as with anything, as me riding a motorbike through India, I mean, it is growth every single day. And the good captains, I believe, are the ones that recognize that they still need to grow, or everything that they say or do of other people adding to them is a part of that growth. And the ones who get into trouble think they know everything already, or, you know, don't need assistance or help or encouragement, or a different point of view.
Right.
So I think Rohit's been really good with that. And yeah, it's a growth. But as I said, he stayed consistent. So he allows people, he's very approachable, you know. So whether it's a captain or whether it's other players, very approachable guy. And that consistency has allowed him to evolve as a captain. So yeah, definitely he's grown.
Jonty, I read a lot about Sir Alex Ferguson, who we know is football's greatest coach. And when you read about him anywhere, you'll read that he studies the players in and out. Like, he will know what their grandparents do, he will know their childhood traumas, and then act upon each player accordingly. Do you have some unconventional coaching like that?
Well, I'm definitely not a Sir Alex Ferguson with regards to results. He's won a few trophies. But he also, I mean, he totally dominated Manchester. I mean, Manchester United, there was just yes sir, no discussion. So very different, but understanding what makes players tick, but getting them into your way of doing things is quite an art. And I think, I watch some of the coaches that I work with, they at pains to spend time with the players because you need to understand them. You have kind of your bowling coach, Morne Morkel. I've loved working with him at Lucknow because he spends a lot of time with each player on their own.
Yes.
Because they all have different roles and different skills and abilities, and he wants to bring out the best in them. And understanding them and understanding, today they actually need a day off, or today they need to bowl a bit more.
Right.
So it's a very important part of coaching, and and I think as management now, and through the bio bubble time during the pandemic, it made us realize and coaches appreciate the fact that we are more than just coaches. We need to be mentors in a way where the players need to feel they can talk to us. Because sometimes in India, people don't want to express their true feelings because they don't want to be seen as I'm not coping, or it's the coach will think he can't put me in a pressure situation because I can't tell him that I'm facing a bit of pressure now. I'm not feeling great today. Yes, we'll practice. 3 hours they run and do, and whereas they actually really just need a break.
Yeah.
So that's still a bit of the mindset of the younger players, and having being a coach and through that pandemic and all those bio bubbles made you realize it, because you're now stuck with those 24 players, 5 coaches. That's the only contact anyone has for an 8 to 10 week period, because totally isolated from anybody else, any other support from family or friends. And we had to be more than just a coach, but also a friend and a shoulder to kind of lean on and just listen to players. Right. So that was an important part of us as coaches, understanding we've kind of got 2 roles in this setup. Because not everybody appreciated that. You kind of felt like, I've got to get in and I've got to work these guys and get the most out of them because that's what I'm paid to do, as opposed to sitting down and understanding them. Right. Because each one is different. And some guys need a kick in the backside. Some other players just need a kind of arm around the shoulder. So, and if you don't know the difference, you could be kicking the wrong person hard.
Yeah. But that reminds me that you often say that one can practice less, but when they should practice, it should be to their best. And otherwise, we hear that just practice makes perfect and you should keep practicing. Well,
it's interesting because my father is a school teacher. So I'm one of 3 boys, and we all went to the same school. My dad was the school principal and also a sports coach. And he just said, Jonty, your coaches, because he didn't coach, he coached the 9-year-old kids, 8-year-olds, first year, just because he didn't want anybody saying your son is playing in the first team because you're the coach, so he stuck away. He just looked after the juniors.
Okay.
And he said, Jonty, your coaches will tell you, your teachers will tell you that practice makes perfect. He said, but nay, that's half the story. Okay. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. So he was saying, not about 3 hours of practice. If you practice for 10 minutes, like it's a match situation, that's better practice than an hour of being out there, and after 10, 15 minutes, you're now just trying all sorts of different things and just hitting or just bowling.
Okay.
So his whole thing was about the intensity that you practice. Because when you play in a game, if you're practicing, again, it comes to the mindset. No pressure at practice, you play freely, but in the game, there's 30,000 people at Vankedi, it's been beamed around, there's 6 million people watching it, there's pressure. So you want to get your contract, you want to get in the auction, you're under pressure, so you're tense. And the only way you can simulate that pressure is to practice with the same intensity. It's not the time that you spend out there, it's not day before the game. So perfect practice makes perfect, not practice makes perfect.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
got that. Perfect practice.
I always wanted to ask an athlete, how do you detach yourself from the results? Because one day you could be playing really well and another day really bad, and you can't let that define you.
Well, before social media, you could decide not to read the newspaper. I mean, now you've got, so much coming from everywhere that it is quite difficult to detach yourself. And I think that the players who are consistent over not just 2-3 weeks, or because a lot of players will have good form for 2 weeks and 2-3 matches in a row, top of the scoring runs, taking wickets, and suddenly 2 bad games. And if they've been feeding off that social media or feeding off that sort of support and the frenzy and the fantastic, everybody feels amazing, or is making them feel amazing, and that sort of that respect and that love is coming because of their results. Whereas we as coaches, we try and give them love at practice, because we want them to say, you've done your job excellently, regardless of the result. I mean, we're honest though. I mean, and that's a big part of a team. And we talk about players taking ownership, is that, in a team environment, honesty is so important. But it's not the honesty between a coach and a player, or the player. It's the honesty between the player and the mirror and himself. So if you haven't prepared, or if you've kind of been half-hearted, or you maybe haven't, because everybody's got their phones and iPads, that's where all the data is.
Right.
So we sit in team meetings, but we say, we've got an analyst, you sit with him, you do your own homework, because you can't have a team meeting if you discuss everybody, every bowler. It's going to be a 7-hour meeting, So you've got the work, you go and do it. So if players are, that honesty is really important, because that's the only way that allows you to keep a steady balance emotionally. Because if you're loving the hype when you're winning, you're going to come crashing down when you're not succeeding. And it's emotionally, it's and the IPL is up and down, up and down. You play, you travel, you play, you practice, it's non-stop. And after, you literally in the space of a week, you can go from here to here emotionally. And then it's very difficult to get somebody back up again. So we make sure, sometimes we kick them in the backside. So if they're getting a bit big-headed and they're strutting around, and it happens, some of the younger players get one chance. And you just got to say, just keep a level head. It is a part of the process. So just talking to players all the time. As I said, we've now understood that we have bigger roles almost as mentors in the players' little circle that they have, because it affects a player in a big way. The emotional highs and the emotional lows.
And so to talk about the preparation for it, how do you train your mind and your body? Because I know that training the mind is as important for an athlete as it is to train your body to play. Yeah,
I think we have access. Some of the teams will actually have a sports psychologist around if the players want. Not every team has that.
Okay.
And even in that team environment, it's not compulsory. They are available. We obviously try and do quite a few team building events where it's fun and the players get together. I mean, remembering we've got players from all around the world. I mean, the best players in the world.
Yes.
Some of them are stars in their international team or their national. They're sitting on the bench. So you've got a whole lot of, from egos to attitudes to disappointments to deal with in a 10-week space. Because one sour apple can really ruin the whole bunch. And it's important that we keep everybody happy. So from a point of view where not everybody has a sports psychologist, but I think prior to the pandemic, when coaches didn't feel that they needed to be anything other than a coach, then I think teams used sports psychologists more. Whereas coaches now, we want to know what the players are going through. So for us, we feel it's our job to get the players into their confidence, that they can express to us that they're struggling. So rather than having to feel they've got to sneak around the corner and speak to a psychologist, and then they come to us, and then again we're critical of this player's perceived weakness. The closer you are to the players, and you can actually pick it up, that somebody needs to talk or discuss, or is not at their best, or needs a day off just away from the game. So it's, physically we have strength and conditioning, recovery. It's a big. Being a cricket player these days, it's there's a big sort of puzzle that you got to get together to just, because all you want to do as management is give a player an opportunity to play to the best of their ability.
Right.
And that's more than just hitting cricket balls or bowling cricket balls, because your cricket skill is one thing, but it's one of the components of what makes a great cricket player.
And so does fitness. I mean, I think Virat Kohli has played a great part, and you spoke about it, that he was one of them who said that fitness is very important. How do you think his game has changed because of the fitness over the years?
Well, I mean, when he played in that under 19 World Cup, you look at the images when he played for
Yes.
India at the start. It's incredible the transition that he went through, or just the understanding that if he wants to be the best player in the world, he's got to, there's no margin, as I said. If you give somebody else 1 or 2% advantage over you, that is just you being lazy, because everyone knew ability, talent, but just because you're lazy, somebody else can physically be stronger or fitter.
Yes.
I mean, that's such a bad attitude. So, I think from that point of view, every player now knows, and I think, as I said, what Dhoni sort of started, what Kohli then implemented, taking India to, top in one day, T20, 5-day cricket. They're not middle of the table. I mean, they're the top team in the world in all three formats of the game. If ranking's 1 or 2, it's always just there or thereabouts. But it's through sheer hard work, and it's been incredible, because captains can talk about it, but when someone like a Kohli is leading by example, not just scoring runs, but this is the reason why I'm scoring runs, or part of the reason is that I'm training, and it's specific training. It's not I'm going to the gym, workout, bicep, six pack. I need to be somebody who's lean and can run all day, and I'm not just hitting boundaries. He hits a ball in the gap like Dhoni.
Yeah.
They're there for two. When ABD and Virat were batting together, I mean, as a fielding coach, it was, okay, you can't be on the boundary, but then the ball goes for 6 or goes over your head, because when it drops there, they're coming back for 2 every time. And as I said, at the IPL, hottest time of the year, it never depleted them, because some of the players you could see, they're hot and they'd make a mistake. Kohli would bat through, finish games, because his fitness levels were incredible. So that was, it was a good example, because it's one thing saying or telling other players to do it, and then you do something differently yourself. You can drag the whole team with you by just leading by your example. So it was good to see, other than if you're a South African supporter, of course.
But you are a big advocate of fitness yourself, and I was reading up online about Life by Jonty, and I really want our audiences to know more about it, and also why you picked India as a market.
Well, India's home, firstly, is a market, and 95% of my work is in India, and the other 5% will be for Indian companies outside India. I've just been to Prague for an Indian company, an awards function. But I think for me, Life by Jonty is not about fitness, it's about holistic wellness. In India, my concern always is that cricket and Bollywood, okay, maybe not so much cricket, because not everybody is biceps and six-pack, but for men in Bollywood, that's what it is. People ask you, how big is your bicep? I mean, people, how big is your bicep?
Yeah.
Do you have a six-pack? I mean, that is not fitness. It doesn't tell you anything.
Right.
For us in our house, where we've got children from, now Nathan, 7 to 17, nutrition is a massive part. Sleep is a massive part. And it's, small things that we're a 1%er family. What will make us 1% better tomorrow than we were today? And this Life by Jonty actually started when we went and lived in Sweden for 2 years. And their work-life balance is incredible. So it's actually a Swedish company. We've now opened set up a subsidiary here in India, but it's not copy and paste from Sweden to India. Because I just said, please, everyone wants to be in India, because it's a market, and it's, it's happening, and it's the third largest economy with such potential, and everyone's thinking, well, if we just get 1% of the market, we'll be fine. And I said, please, I love Sweden, and I respect what they do. In Sweden, as a socialist country, they really look after their people.
Yes.
And the benefits kick in when you have family, because you are looked after, the schooling is then taken care of, university, everything. So you as a parent don't have to slave away. And I'm not saying you don't work hard. They work hard. They don't have to slave away. So they can find a balance, because they don't have to say, I take care of my children. They've got to send them to the right college, or to send them to study in the US or in the UK. They are looked after big time in Sweden by government. If employees feel like you are investing not their fitness but their overall wellness, because having stress through the pandemic, now coming back into a work environment, if you feel that management, your team leaders are aware of the stress and the pressure, and are concerned about your complete well-being, it's much easier to make commitments to come back in, to say, hey, I want to stay here. Because for companies, the last thing they want is constant turnover of their staff. I mean, how do you, then you have to reach out for management or management level employees. You got to go looking outside. You got to recruit somebody to come back in. You got to bring them in, inculcate them in your team culture. So, you know, it's a case of, it's a win-win from everybody's perspective. And for me, it's not because you just research corporate wellness. I mean, it's a massive industry already with huge growth. It's going to happen. And so it's not a case of, it's like my fielding. There's a gap in the market. Let me jump. I mean, I was a good fielder. I loved my fielding at school. You know, so it wasn't a case of, nobody else was fielding. I studied marketing. He has a gap in the market. Let me be a good fielder and they'll love me. I loved it anyway. So I've always been talking about health and wellness and fitness and less now about fitness because I don't train anymore. It doesn't feel like I train. But the lifestyle that we lead is walking. So we have one car. So I walk a kilometer, I go surf. So my steps are up every single day. We surf in the ocean, which is like swimming for an hour. It's physical. It's good for my cardio. It's good for my upper body strength because don't do weights. But it's important that we can bring different things from drinking water, getting enough sleep, you know, because you want to focus on strength, yes, but somebody who doesn't do any strength work, they mustn't be intimidated by what you offer on your platform. So we run, and what I loved about the Swedish model, which we brought here, is that they do a lot of corporate challenges for 21 days, 28 days, so month on, month off, because that's what people want. They want engagement around the wellness, because it is also lifestyles or habits. And what we're trying to do through the platform is just show people there's ways of making yourself better tomorrow than you were today. And it's going to impact, so that 1% change. So it's not about running a marathon next week. It's about, are you walking instead of taking the escalator or instead of taking the lift? You know, so small things. When they serve the tea, don't drink the cookie. Or don't eat the cookie. You know, it's always tea with biscuits in India. I mean, I'm always amazed. Yeah, but it's just small things like that you can incorporate into your daily life that is going to benefit you in the long run.
But what is the process for somebody to join Life by Jonty?
Yeah,
and then how can they make the most of it?
I mean, so we're not B2C. So our platform, it's at a corporate. We go to the various companies and we'll assist them with their wellness our platform. Because a lot of companies are, you know, and through the pandemic, everyone spoke about the need for wellness in a corporate environment. So there's certainly momentum, and that's the thing about India. Sometimes change is slow because people are hesitant to, as I said, to kind of own up to things. But when change happens, it is exponential. I mean, that compound change is incredible. So I think we're at the start of a wave of people getting in and understanding that people need to have this holistic wellness approach. So it's not a B2C, so it's not a click up. So we'll go in 1,000 employees, 5,000 employees. So scaling is easy from our perspective because you don't have one coach trying to look after. We also work with the corporates. We identify champions within the corporates because, you know, as a fielding coach, if I worked at an academy of young kids, I'd go for 2 or 3 days. They were all excited. And then a week later, they've forgotten everything. They just go back. So I work with the coaches as well as the players. Because then when I leave after 3 days, the coaches then keep on, you know, sort of bringing in those basic techniques and understandings. Because if it's not reinforced, again, that engagement is so important. So companies, we join, because everybody has now. So HR used to be in charge of people, but what we're seeing more and more is that it's coming from the C-suites now and understanding that if the CEO is not involved or passionate about it, it's not going to be a life, you know, sort of a lifestyle changing opportunity. Yes, they'll be ticking the boxes, which is companies can do that, but they're not going to retain their staff. They're not going to have more productive because their staff are healthier. In the long run. So we're there to more than just tick the boxes. Through the platform, we offer everything from breath work, you know, advice on hydration, nutrition, and training. So if you're a gym going person, You've probably got your own routines anyway, but we want to get people who are sedentary most of the time, just to have confidence. Okay, I can take on this platform or take on the challenges because it's not going to embarrass me. It's not something that I can't do. We have dances, so dancing is such a big part of the Indian culture. The Swedes don't dance at all. So I said, if it's, again, no copy and paste, we have the dancing doctors, you set up, because music is, again, is, part of the mental wellness.
Yes.
Music is, and movement, when you coordinate and trying to remember it, memory and movement together, positive aspects for your body and your system, especially in your brain. And, a lot of obviously that's where the stress sits. And if we have ways to relieve that at the office, very, very important.
Are you seeing that the corporates are now changing and understanding the need for fitness in their employees?
Yes, they really are. So the days of talking about it are over, but I don't think it's universal across India.
Yeah.
I think because the great thing about India, the exciting thing is obviously a lot of MNCs as well. So the multinationals have very strict employer-employee kind of contracts and initiatives that have to be in place in the work front or in the workplace.
But Jonty, getting back to a little bit of cricket, I wanted to ask you, what has been your most iconic on-field moment? Was it the Inzamam-ul-Haq runout?
It was quite funny. I think it was this year that the ICC ran a poll about what is the iconic World Cup moment. The helicopter six, Dhoni 2011, kind of thought that would be it. So the fact that it got voted, that dive into the stumps as the ICC.
That one was your iconic, yeah.
But, that's a long time ago. The one thing that I'm always reminded about, they talk about that when I come to India, but the one is the catch of Sachin Tendulkar, because every Indian thought it bounced. So it was a match in Durban. But I had a game down the road at Brabourne Stadium at the CCI. So before Wankhede was established. And I managed to take 5 catches in a day. So against the West Indies. So I think because we were not playing India, the fact that there were 25,000 people chanting Jonty, Jonty, it was because when you play in South Africa, you play at home, you kind of expect you always appreciate the home crowd supporting you. But to come to India a year after I'd literally sort of broken onto the scene, just incredible to have. So that affinity with India and me goes back a really long way. I had no idea. The dive into the stumps was in the paper, and then people were talking about it in South Africa. Kids were having haircuts, like the Jonty haircut. Yeah. But when I went to the World Cup in South Africa, people in South Africa were saying, "Who's this guy, Jonty Rhodes?" I was an average, and that's not fishing for I was an average state player, and Kepler Wessels knew that because he had played in Australia, the grounds were really big. They were multi-purpose fields, and he wanted guys like Hansi Cronje and myself batting in the middle overs, because it's difficult to hit sixes and boundaries. And he wanted us in the field for our speed and our endurance and 50 of keep running. So it was a part of his strategy to be competitive. So people didn't, when we were selected, we were not too sure why we were being chosen, because they weren't privy to Kepler's thoughts, obviously. And that dive into the stumps definitely launched my career. So I'm grateful to Inzi too. The photographer and Inzi, without them, I would not be sitting here today.
I saw the clip because it was a long time ago. I was born in 94, but I saw the clip and I was like, wow, you just flung across and
but that's the thing. So I was doing that anyway. Back at home, we were diving around because as kids, we played sport on grass. I get these guys who are now in their 30s saying, Jonty, my elbow is from gully cricket, and Jonty and Junior Jonty, if you were doing something good in the field, but it was always it came at a price.
Yes.
You dive around in India, which is why I'm keep saying, big fan of Suresh Raina, because now the facilities are amazing. The grounds and the infrastructure for cricket are incredible. But prior to that, in Suresh Raina's career growing up, he would have been in some tough fields, and he throws himself around without thought of the consequences of landing hard. So so that's that iconic into the stumps for sure. But I think the most amazing memory that I had, because it lasted the whole game against the West Indies, of people just chanting Jonty. So every time the ball came to me, there was just this massive cheer and Jonty, Jonty. Whether it was a catch or on the ground, whatever I did, just people cheered me. So that for me was the most special cricketing moment of my career.
But I think in India, the Jonty was so much so as a title more than an individual, because everybody is like, you're like a Jonty.
No.
There's a Jonty in every lane in India.
I do know that. I mean, every gully
Has a Jonty.
It has a Jonty. And it's crazy because, I think having retired from cricket and leaving and working for a bank in South Africa, not being involved with the first IPL, you kind of just, okay, cricket's done. That was an amazing part of my career, but it's over. So it's still amazing to come back to India and just, people, it's interesting because you have people going at the airport last night, are you Jonty Rhodes? Or they speak to my colleagues, the Life by Jonty colleagues, the one Swedish guy. What's your name? There's two old guys. One looks like Jonty, but who's this guy? It's not Gary Kirsten. He's working for Pakistan. Who is this? So it is interesting because, it was a part of my life that I left happily and walked away, and there was no hankering after it. But it's been amazing to come back again and just see another generation of Indian
new
fans. Yeah, because I mean the Jonties these days are incredible. They're doing stuff that I never had to do. That stuff on the boundary. That I was, as I said, I was a backward point, and that was my whole career. So the Jonties these days, the Jonty 3.0 or much next level. They really are next level.
Yesterday I was at the store buying this mini bat for us, and I had like, who's coming? Who's going to sign your bat? I said Jonty Rhodes, and everybody in the store looked at me as, where is he coming? Where is he coming?
Okay, we'll see you later.
Jonty, but I have to talk about, last year I think I was reading about cricket fatigue. And I think it's the biggest challenge that cricket is facing right now, because there are so many formats and then there are also so many championships. Do you think there is a cricket fatigue happening?
It's interesting because there really are two schools of thought. And for some people, there is international level as well. I mean, you've got Test cricket, you've got 50 over World Cups, T20 World Cups, and then you've got all your franchise games, and now you've got senior players playing. I mean, there's a women's IPL as well.
Yes.
The Women's World Cup. So there's a lot of cricket on. But as a supporter of the game, but it's your choice. You can turn the television off. You don't have to watch it. So it's one thing being critical about it. It's another understanding that for some players, it's a massive lifeline for them. They might not have been. They might have been fringe international players and not have made a great living out of the game, decent living, but suddenly they've got an opportunity to extend that because there is no pension program or policy when it comes to cricket. You in, you out, and that's it. Thank you very much for your service, and off you go. But so for me, it's a case of you've got the choice as a fan.
Yes.
You can switch off. You don't have to watch it. You can go away from the game. But for coaches, for players, for some of us, it's a great opportunity.
Yes.
And we're still passionate about it. I mean, we're not just doing it for the money. I mean, we are grateful for the money, but we are passionate about the game.
But do you think cricket has become much more commercial now than it was back in the day?
How wide's the... this far apart, this side to that side, poles apart.
Right.
I mean, it's not even comparable. And I'm excited. I mean, a lot of the sort of players what is the start of my career? 92 internationally.
32.
So a lot of the players at the end of that, then all the players in South Africa went back to work. So I've got guys who got a real estate franchise.
Okay.
We had guys who had office copiers and office equipment, players who worked for banks, lawyers, and everybody who retired from cricket went back to work because you you earned enough income to support yourself while you were playing. It's amazing to see. And what I love about it is seeing the infrastructure that's grown up around that. Because now people are putting up academies because parents are sending their kids. So not too early, mums and dads, not too early. Give them a chance to be kids. They must play and have fun. But that infrastructure is there. And without the commercial aspect to the game, it wouldn't be there. It would just be in the metros. And some of the best players in India might be playing kabaddi or kho-kho because they don't have cricket facilities.
But
I know my games.
But that's changing now. Yeah. So that I think is positively impacting. I think I've asked you like mostly everything that I wanted to, but I want to ask you one personal fan experience maybe that you'll remember forever. Any standout fan experience that you've had?
No, not really. I mean, we obviously, I don't have a foundation. We worked a lot for Reach for a Dream in South Africa, so kids with terminal diseases. So not one particular, but just, I also had epilepsy as a young boy. So I worked with the epilepsy South African Epilepsy League, just trying to encourage, because it's quite a shock to the system. Epilepsy is so different because it impacts your brain, so it's unique to you, and doctors can't just prescribe one pill and fix it. And it's a life-changing condition. It's not a disease, so you can't catch it, but it comes with a whole lot of judgment and people being sometimes a bit nasty to kids, especially. Children are quite rude to each other if someone's perceived to be different. So just my work with the Epilepsy League in South Africa, not one single fan, but just these young kids, boys and girls, and sometimes older people as well, because it impacts people at different stages of their lives. But just seeing and going and having their parents say, okay, you might not know, because it's a 6 or 7 year old, that much about Jonty, but here's a guy who plays cricket for South Africa, and he has the same condition as you. So It's not the end of the world. So no one particular fan moment, but just the work with children from Reach for a Dream who are terminally ill, and then especially the work with the Epilepsy League in South Africa, just showing kids that when you know your limitations, it's not the end of the world. It's just you can then overcome them. So we all have limits or boundaries that we can't push or shouldn't push, and knowing what those boundaries are sometimes gives you an advantage.
Right. Interesting. My last question has to be, because I'm a woman, I want to ask you, will women's cricket ever be as important, have so much viewership, and maybe have the financial benefits that men's cricket has? Do you think?
Honestly, not in my lifetime. Sadly, because
Why?
working, because I think there's still, even though it is a business, so you've got to kind of go, okay, so what is market? It's market driven, some of it. The fact that it's taken so long to have a dedicated women's Premier League, you kind of go, well, but why? So I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I see it changing, and I know, and I spoke about it earlier with the Life by Jonty and creating this sort of change and this shift in corporate wellness, because that change in India, as I said, sometimes it's slow to start with, but once the change happens, the growth is exponential. So yeah, I could be proved wrong, and I hope so.
Jonty, I think your business is really an extension of your game, because your coaching does not reflect directly on the scoreboard, and your business does not immediately show up, right? And you're talking about the slow process, but the one that really impacts the rest of your life. So I think that's what I took out from Life by Jonty.
Thank you. That's exactly. Why didn't you say that at the beginning? Because all the talking that I've done could have saved us half an hour.
So thank you so much for doing this. I think we had a great time, and I think the audience has a lot to take away from this conversation from you, because it's a little unconventional, things you haven't spoken about before.
Just got to catch one thing. I'm a fielding coach. Just catch one thing.
Thanks,
Aleena.
Catch it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you had a great time. If you have comments, please leave them below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.